Number 2, which is a consideration of ballot measure proposal by Women Occupy San Diego regarding the establishment of an independent commission on police practices. As Ms. St. Julian comes up, we're going to have introductory comments by our city attorney's representative here.
Thank you, Council Member, Committee Chair Montgomery. I wanted to give an overview of the ballot measure process. On the committee's discussion agenda today are 2 proposal ballot measures relating to civilian review of police practices. Item number 2 on the agenda is a proposed measure by Women Occupy that would change the city charter to establish an independent commission on police practices. This item was forwarded to Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee from Rules Committee to provide further policy direction and consideration for the November 2020 ballot. Item number 3 on the agenda is a proposed measure by the city attorney that would change the city charter to provide for an independent counsel for a community review board on police practices. This item was forwarded to the Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee from Rules Committee for policy discussion and direction consistent with Council Policy 00-21. This committee may approve, reject, or modify the ballot measures before it. A majority affirmative vote is required to move the item forward with a recommendation. If the committee wants to move one or both measures forward, as with all proposals under the council policy process, the proposed ballot language will be revised during the review process and is subject to legal review and analysis. Any motion that advances should direct the city attorney to work with designated city staff to complete legal review and prepare a draft ballot measure. Note that revisions to the measure may occur during legal review. Once legal review is completed and the ballot measure has been drafted, the measure would return to this committee or to Rules for a second discussion. If the measure advances after the second review, the committee would forward the measure to council for consideration. I'll close this brief overview of the process with a reminder of the city's requirement to meet and confer. As we advised the council previously, this measure cannot be placed on the ballot by the council until and unless a meet and confer process required by state labor laws is satisfied. This process requires reasonable notice to the impacted employee organizations and an opportunity to identify and bargain the impacts of the measures. This process may result in changes to the ballot measure for final consideration by City Council. If agreement is not reached, mediation, fact-finding, and impasse process may occur or be required. With that, I return it back over to the committee chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we'll turn it over to Ms. Andrea St. Julian for the presentation. How much time do you need?
Would a half hour be too much?
Let's do 20 minutes.
Let's do 20 minutes.
Let's do there and then try to compact it in there. We have quite a bit of speakers and
sure.
3 more items after this one. So
I totally understand.
Thank you.
And thank you. And thank you, council members. My name is Andrea St. Julian. I am president of the Earl B. Gilliam Bar Association, and we've been working closely with Women Occupy San Diego on this charter amendment. So what we first wanted to do is start out with the premise that we've been talking about throughout this process, which is the main purpose of the commission is to create trust between the community and the San Diego Police Department and create trust in the community-led review of complaints. But one thing we haven't really talked about too much is why there's this disconnect and why there's this feeling of distrust among the community. And so we wanted to first just briefly go over some of the things that have happened in the recent past that have caused the community to lack trust in the police department and also the review of complaints. So I want to remind the council that in March of 2015, the federal government issued a report after reviewing 17 complaints of the San Diego Police Department. The federal review revealed that the police department, that there were gaps in their policies and practices, and there was a lack of consistent supervision and a failure to hold personnel accountable. And that is what had led to these allegations of misconduct. Important for us, the investigation also revealed that there was inconsistent handling of citizen complaints and there was poor tracking of how the complaints were resolved. And of course, there were other things that were part of this review: shocking allegations of sexual misconduct, allegations of cover-up, and also that there was insufficient transparency within the San Diego Police Department. So that was back in 2015, but unfortunately things have happened since 2015 that continue to give the communities pause. One of them is that one of the key supervisors who was implicated in the 2015 review, instead of being rebuked was actually elevated. He was promoted. And again, that leads the community to feel a sense of a lack of confidence. There were other things. There was the Wikipedia issue, where there were individuals using police computers who were going in and deleting the misconduct from Wikipedia pages. That, again, gives a sense of a continuing efforts to minimize misconduct events. And again, even after the scandal of sexual misconduct, the police department failed to even track sexual misconduct complaints, simply saying, well, we're not required to do it by the California Department of Justice. And then, of course, we have the 2018 Rewards for Arrests program, where low-income individuals were targeted for arrest, and officers were going to be rewarded for those actions. And fortunately, that program didn't actually take place because there was a whistleblower within the police department. But again, it shows a lack of supervision about what was going on with that. And, you know, there are other issues that have gone on since then. I've listed some of them here. We can't forget the death of Fredoon Nihad. We cannot forget just 2 months ago the horrible allegations of sexual misconduct by an officer who allegedly solicited a child for sex. And we'll never know what happened there because that police officer just last month killed himself. So that investigation isn't going to be completed. We can't forget Eddie Alvarez, who was beaten and jailed simply because he was exercising his right to film at a protest. And of course, there's Aaliyah Jenkins. And this is what she was before, a young mother who unfortunately, once she was arrested, even though she became unconscious, she was not given medical care, and she died 10 days later. And, you know, I don't want to belabor this, but I want to make sure that the committee understands why this commission is so important and why trust needs to be regained. It's vitally important because of these actions. And so a second component of the lack of trust is simply the process of the current CRB. I want to make sure that everybody understands that many people in Women Occupy work closely with the CRB. We respect every single member of the CRB. The CRB works very hard at what they do. And nothing that we say today is a criticism of those workers, of those board members. The problem is the limits of power that the current CRB has. The current CRB is a review model, meaning it just reviews the findings and conclusions of the police department. It cannot engage in independent investigation. Also, the current charter requires that the city attorney represent both the CRB and the police department. And the community sees that as a clear conflict of interest. And the problem is this trust created by the CRB's lack of independence really negatively impacts the relationship between the police and the community. The community simply does not trust a process that is not fully independent. And so that's what this charter amendment is designed to fix. So what this charter amendment is essentially just a recognition that police officers are professionals, just like doctors and lawyers and dentists and psychologists. And those professionals have independent oversight as part and parcel of being a professional. So what this charter amendment does is it really elevates the police department, as they should be, to the level of professionals who should receive independent oversight just like all other professionals. And this commission really does nothing more than that. So the charter amendment meets the needs of the community because it fosters trust, transparency, and accountability. And all those three factors are key factors in an appropriate relationship between the community and the police department. So the CRB is an advisory board to the mayor, but this new commission is an independent entity. It is independent, and that's vital. The city charter requires the city attorney to represent the CRB, whereas in this new charter amendment, the commission is required to have independent legal counsel. The CRB has no authority to investigate complaints, but the new commission has the authority to do that. CRB can't subpoena. The new commission does have subpoena power. The CRB is a very limited model. It's just a review model. The new commission is a hybrid model. It's investigatory, it's review, it's monitor, it's auditor. It really has the complete ability to meet all of the needs of the community. And again, that's why this commission is so important. The hybrid model is a good fit for San Diego, and that's really important. There's a lot of variety in community-led oversight of police, a lot of variety throughout the country. But what's important is you really have to create something that is a fit for your own community, and we have done that. We made sure before we wrote this charter amendment, we met with individuals throughout the community. We have met with the POA. We've met with Chief Nislite. We've had ongoing meetings. I personally have given out my personal email to people across the city saying, please call me and let me know what you want in this charter amendment. You know, we are wholly community-based and stakeholder-based. We want this to work for everyone, and that's why we took our time really for literally years receiving input. And when I wrote the draft of the charter amendment, I made sure that we put everything in there and made it all work so that it would work for everyone. So one of the things I like to joke about is people will talk to me about the commission, and my response will be, I don't know what charter amendment you read, but it wasn't the one that I wrote. And that is because people have really a lot of beliefs about what the charter amendment says that aren't actually in the charter amendment. So that's why I just want to take a few minutes just to kind of go through the important points and also to maybe dispel some myths about the charter amendment. So one of the biggest myths is that the commission is going to be required to investigate every single complaint. That is 100% untrue, right? When part of the process of creating the charter amendment was I spoke with different boards and commissions throughout the country. And one thing that was consistently said to me was that please don't make this new commission investigate every single complaint. That wastes resources, it takes away time from the more important issues. And so what we did is this charter amendment only requires the commission to investigate all police shootings and deaths occurring as a result of police interaction. And with the remainder, there is some discretion, as I will talk about a little more later. So based on this requirement and on recent numbers, the commission is only going to be required to investigate about 9 to 10 complaints a year, because that's about that's the average of police shootings and deaths, okay? So by requiring the commission to investigate only certain types of complaints, that makes sure that the commission has the resources to work most effectively. Now, but giving the commission the discretion to investigate certain other complaints assures the community that complaints will be independently evaluated. So that meets everybody's needs. We meet the fiscal needs and the commission's needs to have have their resources directed toward the most important cases. Yet, on the other hand, the community can be assured that the commission can investigate other important cases. So that, again, works for everybody. Now, since Women Occupy submitted the charter, its proposed charter amendment, we've had continuing dialogue. We've had a great dialogue with the Office of the Independent Budget Analyst. We've also spoken to even further the Police Officers Association, as well as other stakeholders. And based on the suggestions that many of those entities and stakeholders made, we have made some, we are going to be proposing today some changes to our charter amendment, our proposed charter amendment, and I have attached to the PDF version of what everyone has received a full version of the changes, and the changes are in red, so it'll be easy for you to point them out. I will run through those changes quickly so that you can get a sense of where we're going. We do have a change in 41.23A. It is a change in language without much change in substance, so I won't go into that particularly fully, but the change in language was really just necessitated by the change in language that's going to be taking place later on in the charter amendment. So the first one that I want to talk about in detail is 41.213A4. And that provision, those series of provisions talked about factors that the commission has to look at in order determining whether to conduct a discretionary investigation. The last in those series of things was that the commission could look at any incident the commission deems as appropriate. We had some discussion with community members about that, and some entities had some concerns about that. So what we've done is we've stricken that provision. So, and instead, we really wanted to drill down, okay, so instead of having that kind of large open-ended provision, let's really drill down on what people are most concerned about. And I think everyone in this room will agree, what we're really concerned about is that rare officer or that rare policy that people are repeatedly complaining about, right? If you've got an officer that's getting a lot of complaints and you see a pattern of complaints, that's what you really want the commission to investigate. So in striking that last one, we've added D, that an incident the commission determines may show a pattern of misconduct by the officer or officers involved. And that really gets to the heart of what we all want. And similarly, the second one we've added is the commission determines an incident the commission determines may show a pattern of inappropriate policies, procedures, or practices of the San Diego Police Department or its members. Again, that's what you really want to investigate. It's something that you're seeing repeatedly people complain about, and something that shows a pattern. So those are the changes we are requesting there today. The next one is just following E in that same section. We have made a change, and that change was made as a result of the estimated budget that the independent budget analyst came out with. So the independent budget analyst noted that the San Diego Police Department has 4 categories of complaints. Category 1, Category 2, informal and miscellaneous. So the IBA was a little concerned about the number of informal complaints and miscellaneous complaints that are concerned, and suggested that the investigations of those complaints be limited. So we thought about it, and in fact, we let the IBA know when they contacted us that no, we did not see those as being complaints that would be investigated. We did tell the IBA that. So when we got the IBA's suggestion back, we thought, okay, we need to make sure that we take all of the stakeholders into consideration. We need to think about, financially what's going on, and also the concerns that the community has for trust. So what we did is we put in a provision that said the commission shall not investigate a complaint where the complainant has requested that the complaint be handled without investigation unless the commission finds there is a compelling reason to do so. Also, the commission shall not investigate a complaint where no allegation or police officer is specified unless the commission finds that there is a compelling reason to do so. So, why did we come up with this language? So, what we've taken is the definition of informal and miscellaneous complaints, and we've said the commission is not going to investigate those complaints unless the commission finds there is a compelling reason to do so. So again, we made an effort to balance the desires of the stakeholders, all right? So they are not going to investigate them unless there's a compelling reason to do so. And don't we all want that? If there's an informal or miscellaneous complaint and the commission reviews that and thinks, ooh, there's a really compelling reason here why we'd want to investigate that, don't we want that investigated? It is certainly going to be the very rare case. It will be the very rare case where there will be a compelling reason. But we want to put that in there so that the community can trust the process. If we have a wholesale prohibition that you can never, under any circumstance, investigate what is essentially an informal or miscellaneous complaint, you're going to have community members who are not going to trust that process, all right? So that's why we have that language in there unless there's a compelling reason to do so. I also have to remind the committee that although the new commission will be receiving its own complaints, there will be some complaints that will be made to the police department. And the police department will be required to send those over to the new commission. The police department will be categorizing complaints as category 1 to informal or miscellaneous. Part of an informal complaint is one where the individual has said, no, I don't want a full investigation. There are always going to be people who are very suspicious that when the police department takes in a complaint, that they may have led an individual to say, I don't want a full investigation. And so if a complaint comes over, wow, 20 minutes is already up. So, so with that, what I would like to do is simply thank the committee. Also let the committee members know that I think that the IBA did a fine job on the budget. They have estimated a likely budget of $1.1 million. And I think they did a very fair job on that. I would like to ask all of the community members who support this charter amendment to come up. I particularly want to thank Mid-City CAN and Mid-City CAN Youth Council and how important they have been in the process. One of the reasons why we strongly request that the commission or that the committee allow 2 youth seats on this commission. Also want to let people know that we have organizations from La Jolla, Southeastern San Diego, Claremont Town Council. We have support throughout every part of this city. Everyone agrees on this charter amendment. And for that reason, I hope that this committee will move this along and do so with the changes as we've requested. I'd like to thank each of you for letting us speak today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And before we turn to public comments, we're going to give our independent budget analyst a few minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chair Montgomery. I'm Baku Patel with the Office of the IBA. At the Rules Committee meeting where this proposal was first reviewed, our office was requested by Councilmember Kate to estimate the potential budgetary funding that a new commission on police practices may require under the Women Occupy San Diego proposal. We've since conducted that analysis and issued our report 19-20 on September 9th. Our office met with several stakeholders, examined the proposed ballot measure, and talked with other police oversight agencies in California in an attempt to determine the potential staffing and funding levels that may be necessary for the commission. Based on our analysis, we estimate that potential needs may reasonably range between 7 FTEs and $1.1 million, up to 16 FTEs and $2.3 million. This range is primarily driven by the commission's potential investigative caseload. As was mentioned by Ms. St. Julian's presentation, the proposal requires investigations only on a limited types of cases. These are police shootings and officer-related deaths, which we estimate to be up to 15 cases per year based on historical information. In addition to this, the Commission would have the discretion to investigate all complaints against the police department, which on average over the last 10 years, there have been 123 Category 1 and 2 complaints received annually by the department's internal affairs. We note that this average does not include informal and miscellaneous complaints, which are generally those which either the complainant has chosen not to have an informal investigation conducted, or where the complaint does not contain a specific allegation, identify a specific PD member, or the complaint is generally questioning police procedure. It is our understanding that these other complaints were not intended to be included under the Commission's purview, and we've therefore assumed that they are excluded in our analysis, and we have recommended that this modification be made to the proposal. Within our analysis, there are 3 variables that are likely to impact investigative staffing. The first relates to investigative scope, which differs substantially for different agencies we spoke with, thereby impacting caseload capacity per investigator. We note that investigative scope is not discussed in the proposal and would need to be further defined by the Council at a later date, assuming the measure moves forward. The 2 other variables relate to the Commission's discretionary authority to investigate complaints. One is the percent of complaints that the Commission chooses to investigate, which we assume may range between 25 and 100% of all complaints submitted. And 2 is the potential for the overall number of complaints to increase. For the latter, we note that this can potentially occur immediately should the public perceive the Commission to be more proactive compared to the current CRB, or over time should police incidents rise in the future. We believe a 25% increase above the current 10-year historical average is conservatively reasonable. As shown in Table 4 on page 8 of our report, we estimate the number of complaints that may potentially be investigated to range between 31 and 153 complaints, given these 2 variables. With this taken into consideration, we estimate that 3 FTE investigators would likely be required and up to 10 investigators could potentially be necessary. Aside from investigative staff, other personnel that we believe are likely to be required include an executive director to lead the Commission's professional staff, a performance auditor to evaluate SDPD's compliance with federal, state, and local reporting laws and requirements, and support staff, including an executive assistant and an associate management analyst. In addition to this, we note that 2 other personnel could potentially be necessary. One is a specialized policy analyst to review and make recommendations on SDPD policies and procedures, and the other is an additional support staff member that may be required depending on the number of complaints that the Commission receives. With respect to non-personnel expenditures, the proposal would require that the Commission receive independent outside legal counsel. For this, we estimate that a likely appropriate initial budget for legal expenses to be $100,000, and depending on the number of complaints and investigations, potentially up to $150,000. We estimate other NPE to range between $162,000 and $322,000, depending on the Commission's staffing level. We base this estimate on the Ethics Commission's FY20 NPE budget after excluding their outside counsel costs and adjusting for staffing level. We also assumed an additional $50,000 for other as-needed professional or discretionary services that the new Commission may require. These estimates, which in total ranges between $1.1 million and $2.3 million, are summarized in Table 6 on page 11 of our report. Finally, the proposal included a provision that requires the mayor and city council to establish and fund a sufficient and appropriate budget for the commission. We note that this type of budgetary provision is not typically included in the city charter for the city's other independent offices, such as the Ethics Commission, and our office recommends for this provision to be excluded. With that summary of our report, I would just like to comment on the proponents' proposed modifications to the proposal as they relate to our recommendations. First, on the exclusion of informal and miscellaneous complaints, our recommendation was for these types of complaints to be excluded from both the Commission's investigative and review capacities. The proposed modification only limits investigations and not required reviews. If a review of these complaints were to be required, it is likely that a more significant time commitment from the Commission's board members would be necessary. Lastly, our recommendation is to fully remove the budget provision from this proposed charter amendment. The proponent didn't get to it in her presentation, but she's proposing for a portion of this to still be maintained within the proposal. With our recommendation to fully remove this, our purpose is to maintain consistency with that of other independent offices. A future council ordinance, which would be expected to follow, is the more appropriate place for this provision. That concludes my comments, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you very, very much for your thoroughness in the report. It really, I think, gave a lot of us a lot of clarity about where we're headed. So now we're going to go to public comment, and the first person to speak will be Ms. Maxwell. She has time seated by Julianne C. So you're going to receive 2 minutes. You have 1 minute to speak on this item. So the more time seated you have, the more time you'll take to speak. Following Ms. Maxwell will be Kate Yevendetti. There are 2 seats in the front for people who are speaking, so please, as I call your name, make your way up. Thanks.
Francine Maxwell, First Vice President of the NAACP San Diego branch. We stand in solidarity with Women Occupy and all the allies that you have the support letter of for this charter amendment. What is troubling is the massaging that has had to take place with this charter amendment. Women Occupy, Earl B. Gilliam Bar Association, and all the allies, we've set a lot of things aside. But the clincher for us right now is the youth piece. There is no reason for the youth to be wiped out of this when it comes to who needs to be seated on the commission. 18 to 24, you need their perspective on what they're feeling and what they're not, and how they're not being treated correctly. So when you're having your dialogue and your discussion, we have conceded. Women Occupy has taken out a lot of things. But the NAACP San Diego branch, we stand in solidarity with youth all over this county. And so we will not stand down and not allow them to have a seat at the table. They cannot be the future, because we know that they are the future, but they can't be the future if they do not stand with their elders so that they can learn and take notes. Seasoned seniors need to teach the youth things that have already been done. We are the trailblazers for them to walk through. So please look at, before you start taking things out of the charter amendment, that you do not discount our youth.
Thank you so much. Ms. Yevendetti is next, time seated by Rita Pinkerton, and following will be Marisa Martin-Talbert.
Good morning, council members. My name is Kate Yevendetti. I'm a member, as you know, of Women Occupy San Diego. I'm also a member of the National Lawyers Guild and the Tom Homan Law Association, and a resident of District 3. This proposed charter amendment, we are asking that you support this charter amendment that we have presented to you without any changes from this committee, and that you move it forward. We know that you have received a lot of lobbying from the POA. There's no question about that. Everybody knows that. All you have to do is look at your records and hang out at City Council a little bit. But we also know that council members are responsible to your constituents, not to outside lobbyists. The POA represents police department, 80% of whom do not reside in the city of San Diego, do not vote for council members on the city of San Diego. Your constituents are the ones who have voted for you. Your constituents are the people who want this charter amendment. Your vote today is not putting this into, is not voting it into legislation. all your vote today is doing is allowing the people to vote on a charter amendment that they want. We are asking you to move this forward. Let the people vote. Let our voice be heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Talbert. You have time seated by Eva Posner, and you will be followed by Esmeralda Flores.
Good morning, Council. My name is Marissa Martin Talbert. I live in District 6, and I'm here as the co-chair representing San Diegans for Justice. This coalition is made up over 40 groups spanning from La Jolla to San Isidro and from Pacific Beach to College area. And we've been working to bring forward the reforms presented here today. Council members, this has been a community effort. We have held hundreds of meetings, dozens of working groups, and we've gone through several drafts. We have called experts across the country. We have researched the best practices, and we've worked to create a system that's unique to San Diego. We've met with the POA, we've listened to their concerns, and we've made changes to our proposal in response. We've also been respectful and flexible, even when corruption has reared its ugly head, even when we've been misled about the process, even when we've been given conflicting legal advice, even when we've been denied an audience with council office, the mayor, or the police chief. Even as Kate said, POA's lobbyist runs these halls often. We don't have lobbyists, we have the community. We have hundreds of supporters and volunteers working to make San Diego a safer and more equitable place. We have thousands of misconduct complaints to motivate us. We have millions of dollars paid out in police misconduct lawsuits that have strengthened our conviction. We now are looking, and we stand before you with this proposal that we are extremely proud of, and it is inclusive of all communities. It is transparent in its intention and fiscally responsible. So we, the community, ask you to put this proposal on the ballot. Give us a voice in public safety and give us the chance to protect and serve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Flores. You're up next. You have time seated by Chelsea Burgesdotter, and following you will be Ms. Suzanne Morse.
Thank you. Good morning, council members. My name is Esmeralda Flores, and I am here today on behalf of ACLU of San Diego and Imperial Counties. Our organization is supporting the ballot measure proposed by Women Occupy San Diego that seeks to create an independent community-led commission on police practices. We must continue the process of ensuring the public has the opportunity to vote on the most robust, fair, and balanced ballot measure. This ballot measure is an essential step to improving trust between the police department and our communities. The ability to conduct independent investigations with independent legal counsel and have the subpoena power necessary to review all relevant documents and witnesses is tantamount to providing a fair process and justice to victims of police misconduct. This measure also seeks to make the commission representative of the community by requiring representation from our youth, which we strongly support. We ask that this committee vote to send this ballot measure to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Morris, you are up next. You have time seated by Susie Ditmars, and following you will be Rodney Fowler.
Hello. As I was speaking before about rape kits and sexual assault, I believe that this Citizens Review Board and the investigative purposes fall into that. We have had sexual misconduct show up within the police department, as we know about the one who committed suicide not long ago. And so we need an independent commission to look into complaints, especially if there's one that's sexual assault and maybe they're not receiving justice, or it's against a police officer. That is where I'm coming from. Also, of course, the deaths that have been in police custody, the instant shooting. I used to do dispatch for the North Las Vegas Police Department, and I know that there are procedures that you go through to de-escalate before you pull your gun. Unfortunately, in San Diego, when you hear that it happens within 60 seconds, 30 seconds, they're not applying those protocols, and you can use de-escalation. I have seen it in North Las Vegas Police. So I am recommending that you push this forward to the council and let us voters decide if this is what we want. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fowler, you're up next. You will be followed by Catherine Mendoza.
Good morning. Committee Chair Montgomery, thank you, and committee members and staff, thank you. I'm Rodney Fowler. I'm President and Chief Steward of Local 127, and I rise today.
Could you get a little bit closer to the mic? We got some people in the back can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I rise in support of the amendment with a couple of things. My first concern was about the budget. I want to make sure that the council members have the purse strings to make sure there's not an unlimited budget on this, but I think that was addressed. The other part is I want to be transparent. I'm also in support of the police department. I have a 32-year-old son that's currently in the academy right now, halfway through. Shortly after Chief David Nislight got to be the chief, he met with the Black Employees Association of City of San Diego. I'm a 31-year-and-a-half, almost 32-year city employee. And so Chief Nislight met with us at the Malcolm X Library, talked about recruitment from within the neighborhood, lifelong San Diego resident. My wife and I have 3 grown kids, and so the son is in the academy now, and so I look forward to that relationship. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Catherine Mendoza, you're up next. Will be followed by Wendy Gerlenter.
Hi, my name is Catherine. I want to share what fighting for justice against police violence means to me. As a youth, I was forced into sex work and residential facilities. I know firsthand the corruption of police intertwining. Also a survivor of police sexual assault in October of 2006 in Los Angeles, and been a SART and DV, domestic violence advocate, for acting as an advocate when police do not believe victims. And of course, I conduct my own civilian oversight with filming police interactions in the Mid-City Division, District 9, City Heights. Obviously, this is very personal to me, and I'm just thinking of in possibly 2014 when the sexual assaults first erupted in San Diego Police Department. This is important that it gets passed, and it also needs to stand for police sexual assault and accountability. They are not heroes in any way to victims. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wendy, you are up next, and Larry Stoll will be after you.
Good morning. I'm Wendy Gerlenter, and I'm here representing the Pacific Beach Democratic Club, who proudly and unanimously supports the Women Occupy San Diego proposal for an independent, transparent, community-led commission on police practices. We support this measure because it will make San Diego a safer and more just city. We urge you not to move the city attorney's competing measure to the ballot because it does not ensure complete independence and will serve only to confuse the issues. Please take positive leadership and move forward with the Women Occupy San Diego proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stoll, you are up next, followed by Doug Case.
Thank you for considering placing this measure on the 2020 ballot. My name is Larry Stoll. I'm a 34-year resident of San Diego and a small business owner. I am here to support the Women Occupy San Diego effort to place the Commission on Police Practices measure on the ballot. Independent review of the police practices is a cornerstone of building community trust and public safety. I have grave concern that the current review board is unable to provide a truly independent review. I want to close with the memory of my friend Jamalo Day, a 21-year-old refugee, who spoke little English and was killed by the San Diego police in July of 2014 while barricaded in his house in City Heights. Please let San Diego residents vote on this important commission by moving it forward and placing it on the 2020 ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Doug Case is up next. You'll be followed by Sarah Kent.
Good morning, I'm Doug Case, member and immediate past chair of the CRB, although I'm speaking today as an individual resident of San Diego. As a certified practitioner of police oversight, I support the current proposal because it is a hybrid that effectively blends the investigation, review, and audit models, utilizing the best of each in a way that enhances the work of the current CRB in a very cost-effective way. It is important that the new commission have independent counsel, independently investigate officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths, and operate independently of the police department and the mayor's office. In a letter to you, I expressed reservations about the open-ended investigatory authority in the original proposal. However, the revised language submitted today by the proponents adequately addresses those concerns. Finally, I support dedicated youth seats on the commission, but believe that matters related to the composition of the commission are best addressed in the implementation ordinance rather than the charter amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sarah Kent is up next. Following will be Mary Latibashvili. That's the first time I've ever had to say Mary's last name. Okay. Take it away, Sarah.
Good morning, Chair Montgomery and committee members. My name is Sarah Kent, and I am the president of the San Diego Labor Democratic Club. The jobs of police officers are more dangerous when bad actors are not held accountable. We cannot change the culture without creating real accountability and building faith with the public. The current review board seems to exist only to give the community a fake sense of access to justice. That's a waste of public resources. Changing the culture through real accountability will reduce the violent events that trigger review, representing a savings of costs and lives lost. Representatives of the officers will have the right to negotiate and modify any final ballot language that could impact their jobs. There's no financial, legal, or moral reason to impede the progress of the proposal through this proper process. The proposed charter amendment is necessary, and I ask you to advance the ballot measure proposal. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Mary, I'm not saying your last name again, will be followed by the NAACP representative.
Thank you, council members. My name is Mary Latibashvili. I am a resident of San Diego in District 3, and I am a Democratic activist. I think it's really important that we move this proposal forward. Police officers are public servants, and they need to be held accountable to the public. And we can't do that. We can't increase accountability, we can't increase transparency, and we can't increase trust between community members and police officers without all of the parts of this proposal. We need to have a commission on police practices that has independent counsel, that has a subpoena power, and that has the investigatory power that this proposal has. I ask all of you to vote aye on this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Honore, you are up next, followed by Ann Barron.
Good morning, committee members, committee chair. My name is Clovis Honore, president, NAACP San Diego branch. I don't need to discuss with you the details of the proposal. You all know what they are. The county sheriff's department shoved into a drawer 22 deaths under their watch. Who's going to oversight that? Are you going to fall into the same trap? Or are we going to look down the road years from now and say, you know, the city council could have done something to prevent the deaths of people being shoved into a drawer? But they didn't. NAACP is going to continue to watch, but we're not going to stand still, and we're not going to stand for it. This is important. This is not politics. These are lives. We expect you to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Barron, you are up next. You will be followed by Matt Valenti.
Ann Barron, Peace Resource Center of San Diego. We expect that the committee will pass this on to council as written, as proposed. I want to read aloud a poem. Johnny Renee Nelson read this at a Peace Bazaar about 2 years ago. She gave me permission to read it again today. She calls it now a never-ending poem. The original title was How to Get Away with Murder. How to get away with murder. Live in the USA. Wear a badge. Wear a uniform or wear plain clothes. Wear white skin. Make sure your targets are young, black or brown males. Or make sure your targets are middle-aged or old black and brown males. Choke, strangle, and suffocate your victims. Break their necks, break their spines. Shoot your targets repeatedly from a distance. Shoot your targets repeatedly from up close. Shoot them in the chest, shoot them in the back. There's more, and I'll post it on our website for you to read.
Thank you very much. Matt Valenti is next. You'll be followed by Martha Sullivan.
Good morning, and thank you, committee chair and committee members. My name is Matt Valenti. I support this measure. To me, it's a common sense, kind of no-brainer. As an attorney myself, I look to the state bar as my independent oversight, and it makes me a better, more ethical, more competent attorney, knowing that if I violate my duty of loyalty to my client, there are consequences. My client can simply make a complaint to the state bar that has a lot of power to investigate and to make it right. And for a public servant, such as a police officer, I would want the same thing. I would know that it would make me a better police officer, knowing that if the public has an issue with the way I am performing my duties, there is recourse. There is an independent commission that they can go to get redress for their grievances. Every public official that serves the public needs this. Please support this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Martha Sullivan, you're up next. You'll be followed by Tasha Williamson.
My name is Martha Sullivan. I'm proud to have been part of the Women Occupy San Diego committee that started working on this issue in 2012. We've come a long way since then, seven plus years. You've heard everybody talk about everything that's been done. I'm very, very proud of the work that's been done. And I want to just say, women all over the world have led movements like this. And despite the obstacles, as they say, nevertheless, she persisted.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Tasha Williamson will be followed by Tama Becker-Verano.
Thank you. I support the people, and the people have spoken. And they've spoken, as you heard, since 2012. In the organizational structure of the city of San Diego, the people sit above the mayor and the city council. It is the people's decisions that should be valued by the representatives that they put into the seats that you sit in today. It is with great pain that I feel there are tactics that are being done that are unjust, and trying to again gut and stop something that the people want, an independent commission on police practices. As you know, I have been a strong proponent of complaints against the police. I'm not anti-police, I'm anti-rogue officer. And I'm glad that there are people who are good officers.
One last sentence, Ms.
Thank you. But I will say this, that if you continue to stop listening to the people, they will replace you. And I hope that they do that in 2020 as your next and first Black woman mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tama Becker-Verano is up next. You'll be followed by Marjorie Larson.
Good morning. My name is Tama Becker-Verano, and as a CPA, I work in an industry that performs independent audits of financial statements. This is done to assess financial stability, to identify any risks, to recommend improvements to internal controls and financial integrity. Outside investors rely on independent audits for assurances or going concerns to help them make informed choices on whether or not to invest their money. The audits enhance trust and confidence. So this is a multi-billion-dollar industry designed to protect financial assets. It is incomprehensible that we would not dedicate the same logic, the same common sense, the same priorities to minimizing risks in our community and protecting human life. Just as in a financial audit, an independent commission should be created and designed to assess risk, to determine if appropriate internal controls exist and are being followed within the police department, to improve community relations, safety, and trust, and to ultimately protect the lives of our citizens and police officers. I have more, but please support this charter amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Ms. Larson, you're up next. You'll be followed by Tariq Hadari.
My name is Marjorie Larson. I'm a longtime member of Mission Hills, lived in the same house for over 50 years, and I'm over a 50-year member of the League of Women Voters. We must have a safer San Diego, and this ballot measure will do so by providing independent investigations of police misconduct or complaints. It is free of political considerations, with independent staff and policies not bound to the council, mayor, city attorney, or San Diego Police Department. Please support this ballot measure.
Thank you very much. Tariq, you are up next. You will be followed by Trinh Lee.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Tariq Hadari. I'm the policy advocate at Mid-City CAN. Mid-City CAN is a member of the San Diegans for Justice Coalition that's in support of this charter amendment. And we support this charter amendment without language change, and we strongly urge you to preserve the youth seats on this in the charter. We believe youth have a voice in the issues that impact them on a daily basis, especially related to policing and policies that overly or unnecessarily criminalize youth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trinh Lee is up next. You will be followed by Victor Ponce.
Good morning, council members. My name is Trinh Lee, and I'm the organizing director of Mid-City CAN. I urge this committee to move forward with the Women Occupy San Diego Charter Amendment regarding the establishment of an independent commission on police practices with 2 youth seats. A true oversight body should be independent of politics and have the authority to investigate major incidents and issues of complaints and misconduct, all of which the current CRB lacks. An independent commission on police practices further strengthens ties between the police and communities they serve, especially communities of color. The Mid-City CAN Youth Council have been organizing around this issue for months now because we believe that all youth should have the right to achieve their fullest potential, and we know that youth in our community are not having friendly interactions with police. If youth are being impacted by police practices, then they should also have a say on policing matters. We know that 2 youth seats on an independent commission will allow youth to give their personal perspective and insight. It is imperative that the 2 youth seats are written into the charter amendment because youth seats should not be at the whim of the new council in 2021. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Victor Ponce is up next. You will be followed by Ariana Federico.
Hi, good morning, council members. My name is Victor Ponce. I'm here representing Mid-City CAN and its youth council, who couldn't be here today due to being in school. Statistics show that the youth of color and low-income communities are more vulnerable to police harassment and violence. So this is why our youth determined that the best way to go about this and having proper police oversight, as well as holding police accountable, is to create a new independent commission on police practices. That includes 2 youth seats so that their voices can be heard and that they can have their expressions heard as well. And we ask that you send the charter and amendment to as written by Women Occupy. Thank you for your time. Hope you have. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Ariana Federico, you'll be followed by Michael Brackney.
Good morning, council members. My name is Ariana Federico, and I'm the new youth organizer at Mid-City CAN. I'm also a resident of District 4, and I do urge this committee to support regarding the establishment of independent commissions on police practices. So Mid-City CAN's Youth Council does demand that the committee move forward with the ballot measure that would create a truly independent commission-led, community-led commission on police practices with 2 youth seats. So our youth council is advocating for 2 appointed seats on this independent commission. Youth should be taken seriously as a segment of our community that can be a resource for enhancing community safety. Youth voices must be included in the decision-making process. Our youth are engaged and have continued to show up in these spaces to be part of the conversation of how our communities are policed. And we should want our young people to view the police officers as individuals committed to the role of protecting and serving the community. Each pledge card represents a youth, and we do have more that could not be here today because they are in school. So I hope that you all do support this amendment and do not change any of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brackney is up next. You'll be followed by Evie Kosawar.
Morning, council members. My name is Michael Brackney. I'm representing the Peace Resource Center of San Diego. And I'm speaking in favor of the measure for an independent police commission on police practices, both for the sake of public trust in the police. I support everything that everyone has said so far about this, but also in support of police trust in the public. And to that issue, I want to add the simple notion that this measure would help relieve police of the unfair burden of having to choose sometimes between supporting their own, on whom they depend often for their own lives, and their accountability to the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Evie Kosawar will be followed by Lori Thiel.
Hello, my name is Evie Kosawar. I am a member of Women Occupy San Diego and a resident of District 9 in San Diego. This is the first major step, seeing that this meaningful change in the oversight on the police practices go forward. Those of you who were here when a similar attempt was made for the last election or read about it in the newspapers know that it was put aside in backdoor political maneuvers that reflected the poor leadership of the last council. Those who were around in 2016 remember that real reforms were pushed aside by two then council members to give the illusion of progress. Now it's the council's responsibility to give the community a reason to trust the processes by giving the public the transparency, independence, and accountability that they deserve. This commission will be a major step in creating trust between police oversight and the community, which will make San Diego safer, bring more equity to the criminal justice system. Please vote to send this forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lori Thiel will be next, followed by Jean-Louis Tran. Excuse me.
Good morning and thank you. I'm Lori Thiel, President, League of Women Voters of San Diego, and I urge you to move this amendment forward as written so that the voters can have a chance to vote on it. The League of Women Voters supports city government with structures and procedures that promote responsive, responsible, and efficient government with adequate checks and balances of power, with equal opportunities for citizens and with provisions for citizen participants. We believe city government should facilitate accountability and citizen participation within its structures and procedures, providing for citizen input, which is representative of geographic areas, social composition, including youth. The League supports having a fully independent commission on police practices that has the power to investigate all in-custody deaths and officer-involved shootings, and to thoroughly conduct its responsibilities. It should have an independent attorney and subpoena power. We support policies and procedures that encourage community participation, provide police accountability via independent citizen oversight, and build public trust and positive community relationships. We endorse the objectives of this measure proposed today and urge you to send it to City Council and let San Diegans vote on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jean-Louis Tran will be followed by Yusef Miller.
Hi, my name is Jean-Louis. I'm a local activist as well, representing We the People San Diego. So you already saw in the news that year there were a lot of push for more transparency and more transparency and improvement in the police, the police relationship with the public, up and down the coast, the state, California, as well as probably national as well. So I keep thinking about this a lot because I think that the police cultures need to be changed, and in order for that change to be efficient, effective, it needs to have an independent commission and audit and review. And this is actually going to be beneficial for the department as well, because it allows them to see from the perspective of the public toward the police. And so that way they can take all of that input back and say, okay, we can do better. This is how we can do better, right? So I urge your board to support this proposal without any changes as it is. And make sure to include the youth voice. Shout out to Miss City Can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yusef Miller is up next. You'll be followed by Loxie Gant.
Good morning. My name is Yusef Miller. I'm with the Racial Justice Coalition. The Racial Justice Coalition and its program for ending the chokehold. And we support the Women Occupy ballot measure for independent investigation. The community expects investigation of officer-related deaths to be investigated by truly independent, non-law enforcement personnel due to the appearance of bias towards law enforcement officers. Each of these voices, one of the youth, of diversity, and not only diversity in ethnicity, but diversity in personnel who are not tied with the POA, whether it's working with or related to officers in any manner. We need the community's voice in, and the community is the youth, the community is diversity, and the community is on both sides of the fence, POA and non-POA voices. So we're here to raise the voices of the families of Alfred Alongo, Rivera, McNeil, Vitale, Cornell, Wick, Daisy, and many
Miller,
more.
one last sentence.
Thank you. And many more who have lost their lives at the hands of law enforcement, whether city or county. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Loxie Gant is up next. You'll be followed by Amy Zamudio.
I'm going to tell a story today that didn't make the news. I have a friend who's a homeowner in a multi-million-dollar home in Mission Beach. When an SDPD officer stopped her and demanded her ID for an issue regarding her dog being off leash at around sunset, she turned to walk to get her purse, and he tackled her from behind to the ground in front of her 2-year-old daughter. When videos of this were sent to SDPD and we wanted to open an investigation, we had multiple videos, we had multiple witnesses. They said, you know what, this isn't really a formal complaint. You should do an informal complaint. This guy's a really nice guy. He has a family. He's great. This shouldn't actually be a complaint. Don't worry about it. We don't have to move forward with it. We did some more research and found out he has personally shot 2 people of color. Why is it okay for this man to do what he did to her? And if she was of color, would she still be with us today? Just because of the whiteness of her skin. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Amy Zamudio. You're up next. You'll be followed by Aramik Glass-Blake.
Yes, hi, I'm Amy Zamudio, and as we know, in La Jolla, we had the very unfortunate in-custody death of Aaliyah Jenkins, and I do think that you had compassion when that happened, so I'm pretty certain you're going to vote in favor of this. However, after Aaliyah Jenkins' in-custody death, I was quite shocked how many people from La Jolla called me to tell me about abuses that they had incurred from law enforcement in our neighborhood area. And people didn't feel that they could report or say anything, and it's kind of segueing similar to Loxie's story of the woman in Mission Beach. So it affects our community a little bit. We know this issue affects other communities on a much grander scale. But again, I'm pretty sure, Barbara, you're going to do the right thing, and we appreciate you.
Thank you very much, Aramik Glass-Blake. You'll be followed by Mark Letourneau.
Hello. Thank you, Monica, for all your hard work on this. So I come from a family of police. We have a lot of that will come to a shock to some folks. And I wanted to say that because I think a lot of people think this is an anti-police situation, and this is not. This is what is right, what is just. I've been representing a young lady who had an investigation because she was slammed to the ground by a police officer, picked up and then slammed again. And when the investigation took place, a retired officer did that investigation and presented to the city, and the city found that officer not guilty. She just won a case for $130,000 because the government knew that officer was wrong. We need this. We need the support of you to vote on this. And I'm encouraged and I'm confident that you will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mark Letourneau, you're up next. You'll be followed by Harold Lawson. And just a reminder, there are 2 seats up front reserved for speakers. So when I call you, please make your way to the front. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Mark Letourneau. I live in District 3, and I just wanted to present my strong support for an independent commission that will bring police transparency and accountability to San Diego. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lawson, you're up next. And our last speaker on this item will be Ismahan Abdullahi.
Well, good morning, and thank you for your time. I was referred to this action by SDOP, but I represent myself and the father of a couple young black people, and hopefully some grandchildren at some point. But I think the main thing that we're looking for here is we're looking for an independent, autonomous body that can make sure that the police mind their business and serve the public. Now, this doesn't just serve the public, it also serves the police department, in my opinion, because the police always ask for additional cooperation from the community. This is the vehicle. This is the way to do it. Build trust with the community by being more transparent, and you get, in return, you get the cooperation you're looking for. One thing that you talk about is
last sentence, sir.
Hey, about the youth, that's a no-brainer. I mean, we have young people who are representing this country and losing their lives. Why wouldn't they be represented on this? So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Ismahan Abdullahi, you are our last speaker on this item.
All right, good morning. My name is Ismahan Abdullahi. I'm the Executive Director of Mass PACE, Muslim American Society's Public Affairs and Civic Engagement, and I'm here to lift up this important cause. Imagine having a police oversight committee and reinforcing our deep commitment to police reform by having this independent oversight committee. It doesn't make sense, and let's be real, it doesn't make sense for police to police themselves. And if the commitment to protect and serve is just that, then an independent oversight committee shouldn't be a problem. Furthermore, if you think about what justice truly is, justice without transparency, without accountability, is not true justice. And I want to lift up Mid-City Can's point about including a youth voice in this committee. It's been my life's commitment to invest in the next generation of leaders and giving them an opportunity to learn, grow, and make an impact. Let them lead. Put this ballot in on the top of the 2020. And see what happens. You'll be surprised. Follow community's heart. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have quite a few speaker slips for people who are in favor but do not wish to speak. Sheila Stittums, sorry, I can't read that. Max Cotterill, Ramon Montano Marquez, Stephanie Jennings, Wendy Wheatcroft, Dan Shook Castillo, Layla Aziz, Laura Beza. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. This has really been a labor of love. We heard from Ms. Sullivan that Women Occupy have been working on since 2012, and now to see all of the organizations that have signed on and joined in this effort is quite encouraging. I'd like to thank Andrea St. Julian, there you are, for working so tirelessly on this proposal. And I will say, yes, we do meet with a lot of stakeholders. We meet with a lot of community members. We meet with the POA, but I can say that you can say you have a lobbyist, and that's not a bad thing, because Andrea has been here and has been calling, and so we've really had an equal amount of meetings with everyone because of her efforts. So thank you again. I want to thank all of the members of Women Occupy who were here from the very beginning, all the community organizations that have signed on to this effort. I also want to thank my staff for consistently communicating with community members nonstop. This is a charge that came out of my office, and we have not deterred from that. But also keeping the Police Officers Association in loop, the independent budget analyst, and the city attorney's office throughout this process. I'm going to go ahead and just take chair's privilege and go over a couple things before we go to committee comments. As we know, this proposal has been in the works for some time. I remember being a staffer and meeting with Women Occupy about this very issue, and I can tell you that what's before us is a grave improvement from what we have seen in the past. When Measure G passed, Women Occupy representatives called it a step in the right direction, but we all knew that more needed to be done at that time. And so I think it was last year or the year before last when a more robust amendment was presented. It didn't even get through the procedural process at City Council. And I'll point that out for us to acknowledge as a collective where we've come from and where we are now. Coming into this office, reforming the Community Review Board on police practices was a top priority of mine. I have not strayed from my commitment to the community and to the entire city for police reform, for fair, just police reform. My goal is to bring policies forward that are fair and that promote trust and transparency between community and police officers. This is why within 60 days of taking office, I tasked my staff to begin working with the City Attorney's Office and Women Occupy to ensure that whatever we brought before this committee and ultimately the council would reflect good policy and achieve our goals of establishing an independent commission with independent legal counsel, investigative power, and subpoena power, while complying with state and federal law. We have had hundreds of conversations, feels like thousands, but I'll just leave it in the hundreds for now, maybe 999. A bunch of meetings and other correspondence that shows our dedication to this goal. My staff and I have exhibited transparency and have kept an open door in this process. We've kept everyone in the loop. We've not blocked anyone out. When we have not agreed, we have been upfront about the disagreements and have tried to work through those issues. And although I was not aware of Madam City Attorney's proposal until it was filed, I'm grateful that she is willing to work with us. I believe her intent of wanting permanent independent legal counsel fits into the Women Occupy proposal, and I'll reflect that language in the motion. I just want to touch on two things real quick. I think Mr. Honore brought up the 22 investigations that were not complete at CLERB. Some of the language that the IBA put forward, and they mentioned this in their report as well, and something that we have been challenged with and that we are challenged with is the ability for the commission not just to be there, but to be effective. And the reason why those 22 cases were shoved into a drawer is because we have to comply with state law that says we have to finish an investigation within a year. That's state law. We don't control that. And so when we put forth these proposals, or amendments, it is based on the fact that we want this commission to be able to investigate fully the things that come forward. And in order to do that, we have to prioritize those complaints. We have to. And so that is the lens in which we're looking at that, because I don't want Mr. Honore or anyone else to come back to this council and say we shoved not even one investigation in a drawer. So everything that we're doing is based on having full context for what it is the commission will be tasked with doing within a time limit that has not been set by the city council, but has been set by state law through the police officers' Bill of Rights. So that's what some of these modifications are about. With the youth seat, anyone who knows me knows that I am a proponent of our young people, period. The only reason why, and I'm going to go forward with some of these things in a minute, that I feel that it is best to implement the composition of the board in the ordinance once this passes. The reason why is because if you look through the charter, and this is where this is going, we're talking about a charter amendment, which currently the Community Review Board on Police Practices has about one paragraph in there. And it is drawn out via ordinance, bylaws, and administrative regulations that are, a lot thicker. And that is where, in the normal course of business at the city, that the composition of any board is laid out. Any board, any commission. So that is the reason why I'm going to suggest what I'm going to suggest. It is in no way leaving a voice out, but if we think about the composition, we can have at least 2 seats for youth when we implement that ordinance. And right now, someone said 18 to 24. Right now, we have 18 to 21. We don't want to have to come back to the charter every time if for some reason we cannot fill those seats. We want to be able to fluctuate. We can start with 18 to 21. That doesn't work. We can go up to 18 to 24, and we would be able to come back to council and do that and not go through a 2-year process while those seats are sitting there. We have a youth commission right now at the city that is inactive. We have to work on getting those seats filled as well. But we don't want to handcuff our young people, and we don't want to handcuff what we can do as a council by putting things in the charter that are so specific that we have to wait 2 rounds in order to get some activity from that. In my opinion as a policymaker, that is the reason why I'm going to propose this language. Okay? We're going to say what we want to say, but I do not want to be misconstrued in that. I've always stuck up for the youth voice. Always. I get flack in my office because I hire young people. And people get mad because I hire young people, and it takes a little bit more training, and it takes a little bit more, but I do it. I put my money where my mouth is. That's what I do. So this is not in any way leaving a voice out. But I also want the commission possibly to have someone that has been impacted. That's going to be in the ordinance. Those implementation type things, once this passes, will be in the ordinance that we have to come back and as policymakers make those decisions about composition. So with that is why I'm going to focus on these things, with a focus on the 4 big items, which are establishing an independent commission, independent counsel, investigative powers, and subpoena power. I would like to send this proposal to the city attorney for additional legal review and analysis, and to draft legally appropriate language, working with the committee consultant, for the ballot measure to be presented at the next PSNL and committee meeting with the following changes. In section 41.2, add the following 2 clauses, and they're listed there, but I'll read them. For as long as the commission remains established, the executive director of the commission shall be appointed by the council and shall thereafter serve at the direction and the pleasure of the commission. Also, second paragraph, the council shall establish rules and regulations as may be necessary for the commission to carry out its function. Such rules and regulations shall not conflict with federal, state, and local laws. Second, revise the language in section 41.2, subsection 2F, from quarterly reports to semi-annual reports. In section 41.2, subsection 3A, which reads, the authority to investigate all complaints against officers of the San Diego Police Department, add the following language: that the commission does not have a duty pursuant to section 41.2, subsection 2A. This was also in the report presented by Ms. St. Julian. Remove section 41.2, subsection 3A4 and add an incident in which data shows a pattern of misconduct by officers involved, and subsection 3A5, an incident in which data shows a pattern of inappropriate policies, procedures, or practices of the San Diego Police Department or its members. That was also in the presentation, but these are all changes to the original proposal that is in our documents. Strike the language in section 41.2, subsection 5, that talks about independent legal counsel, and replace it with the following language: the Commission on Police Practices shall retain its own legal counsel independent of the city attorney for legal support and guidance in carrying out its responsibilities and duties. Remove language in section 41.2, subsection 6 in its entirety. Remove language in subsection 8 regarding mandatory timeline. Remove language regarding youth seats on the commission between the ages of 18 to 21. I explained that. And please conduct the following legal analysis. Provide clarification on the commission's mandatory duties versus overall duties. Provide clarification to address the IBA's recommendation regarding funding and investigations of informal and miscellaneous complaints. Provide clarification and establish parameters for items outside of mandatory investigative duties. Provide clarification and or advice as to the placement of the charter amendment as it is currently written. Provide legal analysis on language in the proposal and whether it is consistent with the charter overall. Provide legal analysis on amended language in this motion. Provide an analysis on legal effect of any additional powers or duties clause written in the ballot measure proposal. Some of that we've already taken care of. But nothing in this motion precludes the city attorney's office from changing the section, subsection, or non-material language specified above. The intent of including the language in the motion, however, is to capture the goals of Women Occupy San Diego, community organizations, and stakeholders within the draft ballot measure that the city attorney must write pursuant to Council Policy 000-21. And with that, I'll move this item. And I'll go to council member comments. Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, council member. Just the city attorney would like to make a comment.
Just real quickly, I want to clarify that this was your motion and it was based off the proposal that was part of the committee, what was uploaded for the committee comment, and not necessarily what was put in the presentation. So we make sure that, I just want to make sure that when you're saying revising language in section 4.41.2, you're talking about what was uploaded and presented to committee, and it's those changes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you to all the speakers here today. First and foremost, I want to thank Chair Montgomery for your leadership on this. In addition, I also want to thank Women Occupy San Diego for all their work, as well as all the community organizations and stakeholders who were a part of this very long process. I'm glad to see this ballot proposal come forward. I think by proactively communicating and working together, we can build and maintain strong levels of trust and respect between our communities and the San Diego Police Department. And with that, I'm happy to second your motion.
Thank you. Vice Chair Bree.
I'd also like to thank you, Chair Montgomery, for your leadership on this important issue. And I'd like to thank Andrea St. Julian and Women Occupy. I admire your tenacity, the hundreds of hours of outreach, your willingness to meet with all sorts of groups who have different opinions on this. It's very important. We all know that public safety is the #1 responsibility of local government. I value and respect the work that our police officers do every day. It's a very hard job. And I admire Rodney Fowler's son for joining our police department. It's important that our police department reflect the diversity of our community. I am honored to support this measure today. I don't view it as an anti-police measure. I view it as a pro-community measure in building more trust between our residents and our police officers. Thank you again for your hard work on this.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Kate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation and also to the IBA's office for their work on this at my request from the Rules Committee. I do have some questions, and I apologize, Madam Chair. I didn't get a copy. I think Ms. St. Julian referenced a red line version. I don't have that in the backup, so I don't know which.
I have a copy of the motion, but I don't have a copy of a red line version.
Okay, or I want to make sure which version I'm working off of, that's all, because I'm working off what was uploaded from her, but there are some things that were not referenced.
That is correct. So
okay.
we're working from what was uploaded,
Okay.
which came straight over from the Rules Committee.
Perfect,
And the
okay.
motion is reflecting
Based on
that.
Okay, just want to make sure I'm on the right page. On the one thing that was brought up in the IBA's presentation and the report, and there still is somewhat of a difference between what was presented by the proponents and outlined here today, is in the terms of the category 1 and 2 investigations for and reviews. I think the IBA mentioned that their recommendation was to limit the complaint and reviews only to category 1 and 2. I just want to confirm that based off what was presented by the proponents, and I think in your amendments, Madam Chair, it would only relate to the investigation portion, not on the reviews. So the reviews could still be done on informal and miscellaneous complaints. Is that your motion, Madam Chair?
So as of right now, that is the motion, but there is a bullet to the city attorney to provide legal analysis on that, because we have just heard that from the IBA this morning with regard to that language, but hearing from the city attorney would be good. And then when we come back to PS and LN with the legal analysis and the draft language, we can address it at that time.
Okay, so you're going to be reviewing whether we have the ability to. So can you talk about what your review would entail?
Well, as presented, the motion does state that they want to have us review and provide clarification to address IBA's recommendations.
Okay.
So we will do that as best we can as a legal review.
Okay, and then in that, I know there are other sections. Sorry, I'm going through all my paperwork here. There are other sections throughout the proposal that talks about. I think I brought this up at Rules Committee. For example, 41.2, I guess it's going to be 41.22G about any additional duties established by ordinance and consistent with duties established in this section. Part of your review would make sure that there would be the potential for no conflict between the implementing ordinance and the charter in terms of the powers and duties that would be established by this language for the committee, so there's no conflicts in what they can do, or what they're limited to do versus what is adopted in the implementing ordinance. I'm trying to figure out from an open-endedness of this, if we're limited to the charter, does the ordinance going to be able to supersede that, and how that works? Are there going to be vehicles to maneuver in that? I don't know if I'm making sense or not, so I apologize. I
don't want to misstate the motion, but how the beginning part of the motion says that for the city attorney to review and analyze the draft language to make sure it's legally appropriate. Some of that review will be making sure that the charter is that the charter section amendments work within our whole charter altogether. So there will be review to make sure that the end language is legally appropriate, or we will spot issues.
Okay. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to, I guess, put some stuff on the record, and just because this is the tends to come back to this committee then with. Okay.
Yes, and we are shooting for next month.
Okay.
Because we have other requirements that we want to make sure that we meet,
Yeah.
and so that the city council can vote appropriately for it to make it to November.
So one of the questions I had is regards to, and this is going to be from a definition standpoint and defining it and ensuring that not only the committee knows what their role is, but also from my standpoint as a policymaker, as well as the public in terms of their role on this. So, for example, 41.23A3, it talks about discretionary authority. it talks about an incident that has generated substantial public interest or concern. Again, just trying to figure out definitions for what these things mean. I've talked about 41.2(2)G, which is the additional duties established by ordinance. And there's 41.2(3), I think it's I, any additional powers established by ordinance inconsistent with powers established in this section. Just making sure we're going to be consistent in what we're all looking at. So more than anything else, it's ensuring that there are no open-endedness, and that's what I'm going to be looking at when this comes back, and making sure that, again, there are clear definitions in line with what the IBA essentially outlined, is that I want to limit this. Even at a high end of $2 million, that's still a lot of money. I remember when we originally heard this, I think the cost was projected to be $800,000. We're now over $2.3 million. And when we're a city looking at a $64 million budget deficit next year, we want to make sure that we're not going to be in a position where, again, we can't fund certain things we want to do. So for the purposes of today, I will vote yes to move this forward, but I'm going to leave the caveat that coming back, if some of these things aren't cleared up, then I'm going to raise those issues. So for today, though, I appreciate the work by the chair in trying to define this. It is a lot better than it was 4 years ago from the language standpoint and trying to define things and clarify that. I don't think it's there yet, so I'm qualifying my yes vote today with that, and I will be voting to move this forward. But if it's not addressed in some of these things, I'm going to raise those issues. So, okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Just real quick, I want to bring Ms. St. Julian up to just address some of the costs, because that was at the latter part of her presentation, I think. But also, just there's also a clause within the motion providing analysis on the legal effect of additional powers or duties, or these clauses that are written in the ballot measure. So we're definitely asking the city attorney to look at the legal effect of those.
Yeah. To just briefly address the budget issue, I want to make sure that we understand that even in the IBA's proposal or estimated budget, they estimated that the most likely cost was $1.1 million. So they did give a range because of, the certain circumstances, but the most likely cost is around $1.1 million. That is very much in the pocket and very similar to what other boards and commissions spend and also what we spend here in San Diego. So, for example, San Jose, which has a police department half our size, has a budget of $1.4 million. CLRB, which is the San Diego County counterpart, they have a budget of just over $1 million. If you look at the Ethics Commission here in San Diego, which is an independent commission similar to what this commission would be, they have a budget of $1.7 million. So $1.1 million is very much in the pocket of what is generally spent and what we as San Diegans think is appropriate on spending on similar boards and commissions. And one other thing I want to point out is that we pay out $4.4 million a year on litigation arising from complaints against police. $4.4 million a year. We spend that, and I don't know if we've ever had an investigation as to why we're spending $4.4 million on police allegations of police misconduct. So I want to point out, okay, wait a second. If we're into scrutinizing costs, let's scrutinize how much we spend paying off for allegations of misconduct by the police. $4.4 million. In 2010 to 2011, we paid out over $11 million on police misconduct. So if we want to talk about costs, let's talk about those costs, okay?
Thank you, Ms. Julie.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for answering that question. So at this time, I'm going to call for a vote unless anyone else has any comments. Okay. We have a motion by myself and a second by Councilmember Moreno. All those in favor? Any opposed? So that passes unanimously. Thank you so much. My young people in the front, I'm not going to forget about you, okay? Item number 3, we're going to be in consideration of ballot measure. We're going to call for a 5-minute recess, and then we're going to hear from Madam City Attorney. With Madam City Attorney for item number 3, consideration of a ballot measure proposed by City Attorney Mara Elliott to recommend changes to the City Charter Section 40 and 43. So if you're welcome to stay, if you're going to leave, please exit quietly. Thank you very much.
All right.
Whenever
Good.
you are ready, and let us know how much time you need.
About 2 minutes, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
So good morning, I'm San Diego City Attorney Mara Elliott. I have submitted a proposal to amend the city charter to provide the Community Review Board on Police Practices with its own independent legal counsel. The proposed language is consistent with what we already have for our Ethics Commission. With my full support, the city has provided funding to CRB for the engagement of independent counsel of their choosing since I took office in 2016. The CRB must request independent counsel each year, and their request is scrutinized with every budget cycle. It's time to make that arrangement permanent. I've been advocating for that for a very long time, and a month after you took office, Chair Montgomery, I mentioned to you my intent to bring forward a proposal to make this reality, and did so 5 months after that. I believe that this arrangement is long overdue. It's an important criminal justice reform. What I think it will achieve is bolstering the public's full faith in police oversight while ensuring the fair representation of our officers, building trust between the community and law enforcement, and increasing transparency and accountability in policing. I do not anticipate any opposition to this proposal. I think it's a no-brainer. My preference would be to bring this to the public as soon as possible. I was hoping that that could occur before the next budget cycle, which would mean that it would be before the voters in March. The previous item included language, and I couldn't tell if it was exactly what we proposed in my proposal or not. So it is up to this committee whether you want to push forward this one, see what happens with your first proposal. It is possible to consider putting this on March's ballot. There were no limitations in the direction provided at rules, but this is your decision as policymakers. I just want you to know that you have my full support in terms of independent counsel.
Thank you so much, Madam City Attorney. We are going to move to public comments. We have a few speakers in opposition. We'll give you 1 minute to speak. Julianne C. will be our first speaker, and Tasha Williamson will be after her, followed by Layla Aziz. And please take the seats in the front.
Good morning, committee members.
Yes,
My name is Julianne C., and I'm a 27-year resident of the Park Village area of Rancho Penasquitos, and before that I lived in Mira Mesa, so hello, Councilmember Kate. The reason I'm opposed to this proposed charter amendment is that if it is on the same ballot as the other proposal that you just approved, it causes a lot of confusion on the parts of voters. As you may remember, the time we had 2 competing state propositions for plastic bags, and the voters were very confused about that. So if you do vote for both of them to go forward, it would be nice for one to be in March and the other to be in November. And that's my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tasha Williamson. Up next will be followed by Layla Aziz.
I want to say let's stop playing games. Let's stop playing games. The city attorney and the district attorney's office seems to be a pipeline for police, and rogue police at that. She has not done her job And we know that because of all the cover-ups that I have exposed. We need somebody to be a city attorney and not to try and bring forth something that is against what the people is trying to do. She needs to advise the city and stop going against the grain of the people. I ask that you kill this bill and that you ask her to do her job as a city attorney and not try to be above the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Layla Aziz is up next, and Ramon Montano Marquez is after Ms. Aziz.
When we elect officials and they present an idea that they know goes against the will of the people, like Tasha said, and then they try to present it as it isn't, it's humiliating. And it demonstrates that they don't think we have knowledge nor intelligence of what is going on. This bill does not need to be on the March ballot or any other ballot. What we need Maura Elliott to do is to step away from the San Diego Police Department and work as an independent body. And that's not with this. That's with all of the young people, like one of the people in my neighborhood, because the police don't like her mom. A man tried to abduct her, and Maura Elliott's office decided not to file charges. That's what we need Maura Elliott doing. And the fact that she's here and she's putting her time and energy here because of her aspirations and ambition for bigger public against the people shows that we will see her when she seeks her next office. Thank you.
Ramon Marquez, you're our last speaker.
Good morning, council members. My name is Ramon Montaño Marquez. I am a resident of District 9 and a current member of the CRB. I'm here today as a resident of City Heights. I'm here today to speak against the city attorney's proposal, as the current proposal submitted by Women Occupy addresses the needs for independent counsel. The proposal submitted by the city attorney's office will only cause confusion to the voters and will bring no true systematic reform. And true systematic reform is what San Diegans want and need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have quite a few speakers, speaker slips of folks that want to express a position but don't wish to speak. All in opposition: Francine Maxwell, Jean-Louis Tran, Ariana Frederico, Victor Ponce, Martha Sullivan, Ann Barron, Wendy Wheatcroft, Loxie Gant, Alejandra Martinez, Ismahan Abduhali, Amy Zamudio, and Michael Brackney. I want to say again thank you to the city attorney for being here and putting this forward. I do, and we talked about this, I do believe that the efforts here are wrapped up into the Women Occupy proposal, and I also have a concern about Community Review Board on Police Practices burnout and seeing that even if it's on 2 different ballots. So I would just, I believe that we should not move this forward, and I would make the motion to not move this forward at this time. And we have a second by Councilmember Moreno, and I will turn to committee members. Councilmember Cape.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I don't want to confuse voters either on this. My question was more on the language, given that we have the other measure and the language from this proposal. How is that going to, is it going to be the same thing or is it going to be different? So I was going to say, figure out how to way to incorporate that and how that's going to go. But I appreciate your motion. I was going to say just put it forward for that purpose, but if that's already going to be done through the legal review, that's what I'm trying to get at is she has a proposal with language that I would imagine is pretty vetted through the city attorney's office versus what we just move forward, and how does that language from here incorporate to that measure and making sure that's all okay. So that was the only reason why I wasn't asked to move forward, just for that purpose, but I'm fine with what you've said, Madam Chair.
Just for clarification purposes, the item that just went forward before was for a new commission. And this item actually takes what is currently in the Muni Code and in the charter for the CRB that currently is. So, but how they are then reflected in the new proposal is language that was part of her motion that will be legally reviewed.
So I don't want to misspeak, and I want to, if Madam Attorney wants to answer that as well. But we did, outside of the language that's irons out Community Review Board on Police Practices as opposed to the commission language, because that's what changed. We took the other wording, because it does reflect independent legal counsel, and put it into the Women Occupy proposal. That's part of the motion. So it's still reflected, the intent is still there, just the timing is going to be different. Okay. Okay, Vice Chair Bree.
I just wanted to say that I will support your motion. I think we should focus our efforts on the Independent Police Review Commission, and having two measures, that are similar will just confuse the voters.
Thank you. I'll go back to Councilmember Cade if you have any additional questions. All right, we're open. Like I said, we're transparent. Okay, with that, we have a motion on the floor in a second. All in favor? So that's 3 in favor. Any opposed? Okay, that passes 3-1. Thank you so much, Madam City Attorney.